Hello and welcome to Ananke's Women in Literature Festival 2023. This is our third edition and I am extremely excited. And I say excited because I started this session 24 hours early, but we finally got it right with Dr. Shantha Mohan. Dr. Shantha Mohan is an executive in residence innovation lab at Carnegie Mellon University's Integrated Innovation Institute, where she mentors and guides students. She has been a global software engineering leader and entrepreneur and mentors technical teams and generating customer ROI across the globe. Outside CMU, Shantha is a mentor of startups and students from her alma mater. She provides career advice to new graduates and those making career transitions. She is a member and volunteer of the Society of Women Engineers. Shantha is also a member of the Carnegie Mellon Women's Association and is active in the Barbara Smith Women's Mentoring Program. Her book, Roots and Wings, Inspiring Stories of Indian Women in Engineering, was published in 2018. She co-authored Demystifying AI for the Enterprise, published in 2021. Her most recent book on leadership, called Leadership Lessons with the Beatles, was published in May 2022 by Routledge Press, Taylor and Francis. Shantha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mehr.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to have you here. Now, Shantha, we are here to talk about your latest book, which is Leadership Lessons with the Beatles. I'm going to dive straight in and ask, why the Beatles? You've had such a rich career. You've done such fantastic work that is recognized globally, and yet you've written a book about management, and you've taken a very famous music band. How did that come to happen?
Yeah. For me, leadership is about inspiring yourself and others to achieve common goals or whatever aspirations you may have. You can bring the essence of leadership into your life and motivate yourself. You can inspire those around you to be better versions of themselves. I have had so many years of leading teams, not just in one location, but multiple locations around the globe. I have had teams in Shanghai, in India, the East Coast, and I learned quite a bit from managing and leading these teams. And I have to say that when I started out my journey of leading people, I didn't have all the, tools, if you will, to do the job well. I actually learned it over time. So, and while doing all of this, I have had inspiration for doing that with the Beatles music. For me, music is a very integral part of my life. I don't know where I would be without music. I have music in the background all the time when I'm doing things. And the band that I most love is Beatles. And I think that it's something to do with the fact that when I was a teenager, I got hooked on their music, sitting in India, listening to a borrowed transistor, if you will, in those days, in the 60s. And somehow their music uplifts me. Whenever I feel down, when I hear a Beatles song, I suddenly get, oh, yeah. And so I thought, how about putting together something on leadership, my experience and the lessons that I learned, and have a kind of a theme or a hook for each leadership lesson that I was going to talk about. They say that when you have a mantra for something that you want to remember, you always remember it much better than if you were just, having that in your mind. So, for example, one of the Beatles songs that really inspired me is the song "We Can Work It Out," and to me, that is a quintessential, saying. We can work it out for any conflicts you may come across, and any negotiations you may enter. And so like that, there are other songs that for me invokes the leadership lesson that I have learned in my life. And I thought it would be fun to bring it together. Leadership, people have written books and books and books, right? And for me, I wanted mine to be somewhat unique. So I wanted to say, learn these leadership lessons with the Beatles, meaning you can have your Beatles music on and read about leadership, but you can also go do whatever you want to do. And so that's kind of how it came about. Long story.
No, that's fantastic. And I think we've got a lot to unpack here. Number one, let's get to the writing process. Now, I love the Beatles. They're one of my, if not the most favorite band for me as well. And you and I share,
Oh,
Shantha
yeah.
is very generous. She shares such lovely songs on Twitter, and I'll be sharing her Twitter profile as well. You must follow DJ Shantha. But here's the thing. You have the Beatles, which is undoubtedly one of the most well-known bands on the planet. And you sort of deconstructed not just the lyrics, but the entire sort of the philosophy of the Beatles as well. It's almost as if you're taking a case study and saying, here is a team of four people who are clearly working together. And of course, there's a whole Lennon-McCartney lyric, writing partnership that
Yeah.
they had, and some
Right.
argue tussle about leadership as well. How did you get around to actually sitting down and analyzing the songs, or were you actively listening and then picking things out and then applying them to existing management concepts?
I want to say, when you have lived all your life with the songs, they are kind of imprinted in your mind. So you don't have to kind of go looking for them. They are in your mind, and you can recall them as if, at will, if you will. And that's kind of what happened. But I did have to go through those songs because to me, I was not taking the lyrics literally and applying them to management principles. Rather, I was looking at the titles because they stay in your mind. The titles stay in your mind even more than the lyrics, even though some lyrics are so powerful that you'd forget the title and you are thinking about a certain line in the lyrics or whatever. So for me, it's the titles that I saw as a mantra for the leadership lessons. And so it was easy for me to kind of associate the titles with what I was writing. So, for example, I talked about We Can Work It Out. There is another song which I really like when I think about also the life of these four Beatles, is The Long and Winding Road. And, Beatles, when they got together, they had faced so many rejections before they finally got a record deal with George Martin. And so to me, there are parallels, if you will, of the Beatles' life. Team work is another one. If four people getting together, making music, that is a major team lesson, if you will. And so there are things like that that I kind of weave together, if you will, in writing this book. So it's not the lyrics, literal meanings, because if you see some of the songs, the lyrics are actually, they have nothing to do with what I'm writing about. So for example, there is which song is it? It's Getting Better. To me, Getting Better is about optimism. But if you look at, what they are singing, it was about having been mean to their woman and things like that. So it's not a literal thing, but rather the spirit of it. It's getting better, for optimism.
It is definitely, the spiritual element is 100% there, but I also feel that, Shantha, what I found personally remarkable about your book was that we have got a wealth of literature out in the world about management. It's taught at university. I studied it as well, and I still remember Peter Drucker, for example. He was, the gold standard, and many other books. along for different areas of management, HR, organization,
Yeah.
marketing, all strategy development, everything. But
Yep.
I feel that we now see the world sort of in categories. You've got the boomers, the millennials, the Gen Z. This is how, and it's sort of seeping into academia as well, that you end up and businesses, where people are actually thinking, how do we cater to Gen Z? How do we enter into their minds for longevity? Because the world has changed. COVID has had a
Yeah.
huge impact. We're talking about issues and themes such as sustainability that perhaps did not matter 5 years ago. Do you feel, Shantha, that leadership has got to change as well? Can you continue to lead in the same way that, say, off the top, I mean, I'm an 80s kid, I suppose, from the 80s, to today, I do see change in terms of how people are now managing teams and how workplaces are adapting themselves. Do you feel that we need to come up with new management principles and make them more relevant?
I would say we don't need new management principles. We have to go back and look at the ones that make the most sense, because there have been leaders who have been talking about the humanistic way of leading.
Yeah,
So
sure.
if you go back and look at the management literature, leadership, gurus and so on, there
Yeah.
are people who have been advocating for the kind of leadership style that is needed today, which is more humanistic. It's not the autocratic, my way or highway type of leadership. It's more of a leadership that is collaborative. Today, I think everybody acknowledges that the world is very complex, has become complex with all the technological advances we have and the things that are going on, such as, for example, who knew we were going to be going through a pandemic, right? So when we understand that leadership is not about just one person leading, but rather one person getting many people come together, diverse set of people to come together and solve problems for this complex world. And I think that people have talked about this for a long time, but we have not woken up to the fact that we do need something very different from the styles that existed before, where one strong man was the leader that people were looking up to lead everybody. Now people understand there are many strengths that women bring in, which should be understood and should be taken advantage of. And so the world is kind of moving towards that humanistic way of leading, not just with the head, but also with the heart. Compassionate leadership is being talked about. All that is good, and we have also seen some very good examples during pandemic, like Jacinda Ardern from the New Zealand Prime Minister. How do you lead in a crisis? So it's there. The question is how quickly everybody will adopt this humanistic way of leading. That is the question.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I'm so glad that you brought in the gender element, because I was sort of hoping we could discuss that as well. Traditionally, you wouldn't see very many women in leadership roles. And yet I find it really interesting that if we look at South Asia, for example, we have produced so many female leaders who have dealt with innumerable political crises. I mean, you just have to look at different countries across, South Asia to see that these women have been there. They've been recognized long before the West was producing them. In fact, one of the original suffragettes was actually Princess Sophia Dalip Singh. So there's definitely lineage, of female leaders coming forth. But on the other hand, Shantha, I find it I fail to understand why there aren't more women of color who are emerging as leaders. When we still talk about leadership, we're still very much looking at Western leaders. Where is it that women of color are going wrong? Or what is it that we need to do more to come forth and share our skills? Because let's not forget, we're sort of working with so many things. We have our cultural side as well to cater to and to manage. And yet we're up there in terms of skills, in terms of knowledge, in terms of degrees. And it's having to balance both worlds, really. But we're still not, I don't know, we're still not as visible or not having as much of an impact. Why do you think that is?
For that, you have to kind of look at where women are in the world. We are 50% of the world.
Yeah.
Yet, if you look at where things are, leave aside the leadership part. Just look at what women are doing in the world, and how active are they in politics, in films and the movie world, in writing, in business, in technology.
Yeah.
The kind of recognition that a man gets in all these areas is not coming to women yet.
Yeah.
And so I think that, if you look at it, then that propagates all the way up to where there are leaders, right?
Sure.
So you got to have equal participation starting from wherever we start.
Yeah.
And then the funnel becomes bigger, and then you can get more women leaders and more attention being paid to the women. If you go look at every industry, every domain, you will find women saying we are not getting equal representation.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, they're not being paid, equally. They're not. If you go talk to a Hollywood movie star, they would tell you they don't get meaty enough roles. They'll, stories are not written for them. Yeah, my daughter is a writer, and she, complains all the time about how women of color are not recognized as much in the writing world.
That's very true. But I think that a lot of that has to come down to how much management is also involved in our personal lives and how it's taxing. It takes a toll. And I think a lot of us are now sort of speaking out, at least on social media. But I feel that when it comes to leadership and it comes to your skills and your role, and I mean, there's something that you said which has really stayed in my mind right now, that you did not have the tools in this modern day world when we've seen, the rise of MNCs and we've seen different ideologies, whether it's from communism to capitalism to socialism to liberalism, all these different ideologies are there. And of course, the pandemic has made people aware of how limited our resources are on the planet. Do you feel that for leadership to be successful, you have to have created people who can then carry on to become better leaders? But we're here, like you very correctly said, in a very complex world. And somehow I feel that the leadership of previous decades has failed because we're at a point where life has become more difficult. And there's this growing sense of awareness that we are now living at a time with limited resources. What do you think has happened? Do you feel that previous leaderships had their focus more on, let's say, profit rather than human development and other areas that could perhaps have avoided where we are today?
I want to say that it's not any one thing. That this is where the complexity comes in, right? Yeah, sure. So it's not just the previous leaders concentrating on only profit and not development. It's not just that.
Yeah.
It's also that, we are going through tremendous change, and the change is being brought about by technology. And when we are investing so much in technology, we kind of tend to forget the human impact, right? So, for example, if we are talking about AI, the AI is the craze right now. It's hyped up so badly that sometimes I don't even want to look at the news, news articles about AI. because I think that when we have so much technological evolution, which is happening at a pace that we have never had before, it's the changes are coming so fast at us, and we have to adapt and move with it, but at the same time not forget the humanistic aspects of life. And that is very hard if you have not been thinking about the humans and how technology affects humans. See, I am a technologist, so I think about this quite a bit.
Yeah,
so if you are building solutions without thinking about what's happening to the humans, it can be devastating in terms of what you will see in the future. And so I want to say that it's not just the leaders not paying attention to development. It's the whole world is kind of in a crisis, I would say, that we have to come out somehow, ground ourselves into in the humanism aspects of things and move forward. And I am an optimist, and I believe that we will. I absolutely believe that we will overcome any difficulty that might we will face. I mean, we've gone through this pandemic now. I mean, how did we do that? Right. So many people lost their lives, that's for sure, but it could have been much worse. We got the vaccines out so quickly, and people managed to work remotely. I think humans are very, very capable. And so I'm very optimistic that we will overcome whatever is in front of us. But in terms of leadership, I think that you will see new leaders coming up and dealing with the various challenges that are thrown at us.
Absolutely. Shantha, what role does AI play now when it comes to management? Let's face it, technology is far more effective, it's far more efficient than, say, human labor. In terms of, I suppose, scheduling, organizing, it's just a lot more sort of, it's easier to sort of just get the work done. Again, that part comes in about, especially if you're a woman, you've got so many things to juggle, and then you have a machine who's just like, yep, just get it over and done with. Do you feel that management is going to change with AI? I know that, you just said you don't like what's being said out there in the media, it's everywhere. But do you feel that it is going to affect management and how leaders use it for running their entities?
Sure, and it will manifest in many different ways. People are already talking about, how, and this is one of the things I've heard, that people want to have AI help us do work better. They're not saying eliminate humans yet, but there will be jobs where you may not need, if you had 10 people doing something, you may need only 5. But the thing is, sure. But I think the jobs actually changed. I mean, when the Industrial Revolution came, people also said, everybody is going to be without jobs, but that didn't happen. It's just that jobs changed. And so sure. We will have changes to our jobs. And in terms of managing, I think that there will be a lot of different AI tools available to do management better. So maybe you will have less middle managers, possibly. Your organization, I don't believe that you can have a totally flat organization, but you could have less hierarchies, perhaps. You are able to manage, a bigger group than a smaller group, perhaps. So there are all kinds of possibilities. And all of this, you have to think about augmenting versus replacing humans. And
Here's the thing, though. I mean, no AI machine or AI app or software can do what you did. For example, taking the concept of a pop culture element and then applying management strategies or principles to it, right? To create an original body of literature. So
Yeah,
that's where I feel that technology does have its limits, and we definitely do need humans because you've got the creative element is very much a human experience, and we are drawing
exactly.
upon that. And we
Yeah,
still, I mean, I find this in my work, and I know that you do this as well, where you end up mining your own life to sort of push, to sort of
yeah.
create something and put it out there. Um, how would you see where would the Beatles fall into AI? I've got to ask you this.
Where would Beatles fall into AI? So
Yeah,
let's talk about music being produced by AI, right?
sure.
Music is being produced by AI. I mean, it's you can go look up.
Pink Floyd.
So AI has become generative. It generates pictures. It generates music. It generates articles. It's there everywhere. So
Yeah.
you will have something, but it just doesn't have the soul.
Yes. Yeah.
When you hear a Beatles song or any other song that you really love, you could feel that artist's soul in that particular result or work, if you will. When you go hear something that is generated by AI, I don't believe that you would feel that human soul in there. And we are all people who have a lot of emotions. We get moved by things. And I just don't see, having a machine replacing Beatles.
No, I don't see that happening. And if it does, we will stay true to the original Beatles, Shanta. You and I will definitely stay true to them. But um, what is it that you're now looking forward to, Shanta? Are you writing another book at the moment? Are you hoping to continue to put out new, fresh literature with regards to the lessons that you've learned through leadership, your work experience?
I continue to write here and there, articles on leadership. So most recently, I wrote one on trust. How do you make sure that people can trust you? Otherwise, you can't lead, right? So things like that. I keep writing articles, but I am thinking I would like to write a book on mentoring, because mentoring is something so uh, important to me. I have been mentoring so many people now, and I get a lot out of mentoring. It's not just that I'm helping so many people, but doing the mentoring, that process is so inspiring to me. And I see all my mentees, how they are so courageous about opening up and saying, I need help here. That gives me hope that one day I will have the courage to be like them, go out and ask for something that I want, right?
You are
Yeah,
incredibly brave.
so yeah, I
You
would
are
like to write a book on mentoring, but I don't know if it'll happen or not. It's book writing, it's a long and tedious process,
It
right?
is very tedious and contrary to belief, it's a very lonely activity,
Exactly.
very lonely. And it's
Hmm.
frightening when one is left alone with your thoughts because then you sort of realize so many things about yourself and it's a great exercise in self-reflection. But Shanta, we're near the end of the session, so if there's
Right.
anything I've missed out on, anything you'd like to add, please do so.
Um, I don't have anything to add. I just want to say, you're doing this great uh, literary festival, and I want to wish everybody participating great experience and a great success to what you're doing. So
Thank you so much, Shanta. Thank you. It really means a lot, and I am so grateful to you for taking the time out to do this. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Not at all.
I
Take care.
really love talking to you, you know.
Likewise, likewise.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a dear friend, and of course, we will continue our conversation on Twitter when it comes to music.
Yes. Yeah.
And thank you so much once again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with Shantha, we'll be sharing her details on this videos underneath the comments, and we hope that you've enjoyed the conversation with us. Thank you.